I'm Chris, and this is Al and Mike, and this is another episode of Readiness Rewired, a healthcare preparedness podcast. But today, we're broadening our podcast collection a little bit with first in a series of shorter sessions. Mike, what did you think was a good idea or a good name to call it?
Hey, I think these little brief things that we do that are 30 minutes or less, it's a hot wash. We're gonna review things that have happened in a briefer format. How's that?
Perfect. Al, you on board with it?
I like it. It's a quick recap, and we'll include our 3 ups, 3 downs kind of concept in there, and we'll move on.
It doesn't have to be something that happened. It can just be a topic or whatever that affects our former industry. How's that?
Okay, I'm good. I've got us on a timer now for 20 minutes to see what we can come up with. So, Al, you want to throw something out there to talk about today, or Mike?
I'm going to let Mike start off because talking, behind the scenes, he had a great, concept of just taking a look at the effects of the changes that are happening within preparedness and some of the entities that help counties, help cities, help states be prepared.
Yeah, and my recent travels, I've been listening to people from different parts of the country on how, I don't know, maybe it's been about the last 6 months or so where the environment that we do our work or do our old work, or we expect our successors to do our work and continue it, has changed pretty significantly. And so, it's worth observing. It's like, hey, is it harder to be an emergency manager for a healthcare entity or a healthcare system? It sure sounds like to me that the general consensus from people is it is becoming harder. We don't know the full effects yet. Would you guys agree?
I would, in fact, I think the good point, Mike. We don't know the full effects yet, and some people get up in arms right away. Other people are fully supportive, and as we've seen in healthcare at our industries, change happens all the time, and people don't like change. And it's not that change is bad. Change just makes you think differently, and sometimes doesn't go well, but other times you go, you know what, it wasn't as bad as we thought. We just needed to regroup. I talked to one of my contacts, and he said, we just need to refocus on the primary mission, step back, and with what's happening with some people, organizations getting smaller, some changes could be good. We just need to let it play out a little bit rather than make that quick judgment. I don't know how you guys feel.
So you're kind of talking, both of you, taking like a 10,000-foot view and saying that there are some changes. Like if I was to throw out the acronyms, there's FEMA and CDC and NIOSH and NETEC, and there's some real fundamental background changes that are causing them to rethink and reformulate how they're going to approach, and that's what we want to talk about.
So in my travels lately into different regions and working with our group of experts in the world of special pathogens, and what I'm hearing from them is what's hurting our country's ability to monitor for emerging pathogens, disease states that could have a significant impact on the U.S. And the world, for that matter. Because they often source from a different part of the world, right? They're not getting intel reports regularly like they used to from CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. And sadly, what they've been told is that they can ask, but they're not going to get information or reports fed to them on a regular basis like we were used to having before. And so now it's a matter of, if you ask, they can tell you. But if you don't ask, there won't be any of this regular sort of situation reporting that we've always been used to. And so what was made clear to me in my travels is that we in the different regions who are involved in this sort of thing, and each region has their own primary regional special pathogens treatment and coordinating center, that we have to talk to each other better, and we have to network together. And if you've got insights or individuals inside the system, like for example in the CDC, and you collaborate with them or talk to them and you learn something, for God's sake, tell everybody else too. So we have to rely on ourselves to be able to keep track of maybe what's happening, what's emerging, what outbreak just happened in what part of the world that could potentially jump on an airplane and come here to the U.S. So that's one thing that got me thinking about this quite a bit. It's like, okay, Intel, we call it Intel, right? Sharing is not as proliferate and automatic as it used to be over the last 6 months.
And I hear the term, and I agree with you, Mike. And I think the intel is so important for a lot of organizations. But you know, and not to be on one side or the other, but you just kind of take a look and say, okay, we were used to being spoon fed, and now we need to change. We need to be adaptable in the new way. Kind of like COVID, when we all had to meet together. We all had to go to physical meetings. We all had to be at a certain site. And then COVID came along, and all of a sudden this thing called Zoom and Teams and everything came on. And it's like, I'm not sure I like it to begin with, but it works pretty well right now. So I think that just that being adaptable, being, that change happens. We're going through that phase right now where everybody's a little uncomfortable, but I think you're right. It's the communication. Let's just figure out, and for others, figure out what's the best way that we can keep going and keep moving forward.
I'm going to take maybe a slightly different path, no surprise, but my concern is twofold, and it's maybe starts with a question, Mike. Is the intelligence itself still out there? And you're just talking about the distribution of it, or are we talking about, as we know, some fundamental research, which is slightly different direction, but research itself is being terminated, cut back, or moved out. And so I'm concerned about whether we're just talking about access to the information, and even in that context, I'm not very comfortable with that direction, because the idea of saving money, for example, or shifting from we'll gather the intelligence but we won't distribute it, making information scarce is the antithesis of what emergency management is about. We're supposed to be providing regular updates, and telling people that, well, now you're on your own to go get it, seems like the wrong direction to go. Now, having said that, I know there's some people that don't do their own work, right? Don't develop the networks and the collaborations, Al, that you're talking about, and just rely on somebody dumping a lot of information, where in some situations that person that provides that information may not be accessible or be able to do it in a timely fashion. But Mike, what are you hearing about the impact on research and just the intelligence gathering?
I think you make a good point. It's somewhat akin to what Al was talking about, that maybe the automatic spoon-fed distribution of data isn't happening as much. It's not. I don't think so. But I think you're right as well. It's not being collected. If you talk to our friends in public health, the gathering of data in terms of disease processes and things like that at the state, local, national, and international level, it's their opinion that gathering of data has not been what it has been in the past. So if the data is not there to distribute, there's nothing to distribute. And so that's a major concern, that it's not being gathered. A good example would be perhaps this measles situation we're dealing with right now. Do we just know the scope of it? Have we been gathering the data? Do we know the full breadth and width of the current outbreak of measles? Our public health friends will tell you we don't, because those cases, the data is not being reported and collected like it used to be at the state, local, and national level. And I think, the number of cases being reported on I don't know if they do it. I don't even know what the time frame they are of reporting them right now. You see a steady escalation of cases. Some public health experts believe that's just the tip of the iceberg, which makes sense to me. And it should to everybody who knows that, measles is the number one most contagious disease virus, human to human transmission that there is. It doesn't get any more contagious. If everybody remembers that R naught number, R naught, R with the O at the top, that means for every confirmed case, how many people could be exposed and affected by that one person. And the R naught on measles is 12 to 18. So 12 to 18 people who are susceptible. Now we have to make it clear they have to be susceptible to the disease. That's why they're so concerned when somebody's on an airplane, or one person or two people was confirmed to be sitting in the audience of a big major concert lately. They get all upset. People go, why? So many other people. Well, 12 to 18 people could be exposed and contract measles who are susceptible. Now, to be susceptible, you may have never had measles before, or you've never been vaccinated. And there are some rare instances where those of us who have been vaccinated, the immunity has waned for some reason, which is a fairly rare event. So that's an example of where we don't know that the data is being gathered and completely, trying to get us as good as a blanket representation of what's really going on out there. And that's just one virus. I mean, that's the big concern.
So with that, there's kind of two pieces to that, right? There's reporting of the information, there's the raw data, and then there's the packaging it in such a way that Al and I can understand it better. R naught, we kind of remember from COVID, but I think if I understand and recall some of the stuff I've read about it, somebody that has measles that's in a room, there's no 6 foot rule on this like we had with COVID. It is anywhere in the room, and it's 2 hours after they leave the room in terms of its infectability. So, I mean, different ways to characterize it. And I think that's a big part of what the CDC has done in the past, right? And NIH, to a certain extent, has not only done the research, but helped to put it in layman's terms so we understand as we're turning around. For example, Al and I are in emergency management, but not infectious disease heavy in terms of our orientation. So we rely on that information to be shared.
Yep.
As during COVID, we were looking for you and your peers in NETAC to help us understand what are some of the concerns and strategies to go forward. So yeah, the communication, I think we'd all agree that it's important to reevaluate what we're doing, just like we're supposed to do hazard vulnerability analysis or threat assessments regularly to see, what's assembled on the deck and is it of value. But I think somewhere people have gotten really busy and there's a whole lot of stuff being reevaluated and paused without having our voices heard maybe about what that value is. So in addition to NETAC, I think Al, did you say you had conversation with some folks about, and our thoughts were with CISA, that cyber, what is it?
Cybersecurity.
Yeah, an information agency, that there's real concerns about it being dismantled, and that's not necessarily the case. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And I was really concerned because all three of us have close contacts, in that area that we've used at our healthcare systems before to kind of help us with some of those things. And we were, as I was talking the other day, they said, well, and we've seen it in emergency preparedness before, when you don't think anything is happening, cuts are easy to do. And we've seen some cuts that we go kind of cringe and go, man, I don't know. But there seems to be that pendulum that swings back and forth. And all of a sudden you go, man, maybe I cut too much. Now I got to bring some stuff back in and I got to do this. And you find that ebb and flow balance in there. And that's what they're really seeing, because some of the cuts that I was talking about with the contacts that I had said, they offered some voluntary early retirement on some of those people. And the people were thrilled. Now, we lost a lot of talent, but the comment also was there was a little bit of fluff in there, a little bit of pencil pushers that weren't doing as much. So I'm trying to stay positive and say, we might go too far one direction, but we'll find the center again and come back to it. Your point, Mike, with the measles, it's a scary time to be doing that because we've got to stay on top of things like that. And that's what we don't want slipping through our fingers and getting out of control, because once you don't have control on something, it's a lot tougher to get your hands back around it.
Well, and on our business, you just never know, right? What's going to happen. If something's not happening today, it could certainly happen tomorrow. And case in point is weather. I'll bring up another example. All right, so let's look at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and NWS, National Weather Service. What they lost 500 some positions across the country out of the National Weather Service, and the offices that are out there. There's 100 and some. What Rich tell us when we had him on about last fall? 130, 120 offices, something like that. I can't remember.
At least,
anyway. Yeah. They cut all those people.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, is that a good idea? Could there have been fluff? Maybe, sure. Like Al, you make a good point. There's always fluff. There's fluff in our hospitals. There's fluff everywhere. But when you take a chainsaw and go in and cut this big chunk out and then realize, oh, crap, we could have used those people. Like, oh, God, we have a hurricane season that's starting right now.
Yeah.
My understanding is the new director of FEMA didn't realize we have a hurricane season? Really? Maybe we need some people back. With the Weather Service, same situation. They cut 500 some people, and you and I and all of us are very close to our weather people because that affects our hospitals, right? And, you got a tornado or a supercell coming down into your area and could threaten your facility. Now we're under the gun to make decisions of whether we move patients and stop procedures. And, that's big stuff, right? And so they cut 500 some weather people out. And now we're in the middle of severe weather season. We just had a bad system go through last night, right?
Yep.
And I was watching that, and I was watching the performance of our local office, and it seems like they did fine. Okay. But some offices don't have that 24/7 staffing anymore because of it. And so now all of a sudden I hear they're trying to rapidly hire 125 meteorologists back into the Weather Service because they cut it too far to the bone. It's like, okay, there could have been a better way to do this, especially in its severe weather season for one thing. And we got a hurricane coming, season starting too as well. It's like there didn't seem to be any thought process to all this and to make it in such a way to do it in a way it doesn't cause harm, and not to mention disrupt people's lives. These meteorologists lost their jobs. It's like, okay, they were destroyed. I know we lost Rich, and Rich was in early retirement, which I think that was fine. If he wanted to go out and it was great, those people could be celebrated. But it's like, that makes the environment that we try to work in and our successors are going to be trying to work in, just makes it more difficult, in my opinion, on a job that's already pretty damn hard to do.
Well, and especially when some of our successors don't have the background and experience to lean on all the contacts, and that's a real scary piece of it too. They'll learn, but they're going to be baptism under fire, and sometimes that's not the best thing to do.
Yep. I think we're approaching 20 minutes, guys. Well, there's our reminder.
There's our perfect reminder. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we go kind of around one more time and kind of wrap up. And I guess maybe since I'm speaking now for continuity's sake, I'll just add that I think in addition to the frontline operational thing, and Mike and Al both making excellent points about that operational information. How do we get the tactical information and the strategic information from the Weather Service and so on? There are also a lot of questions about some of the support, day-to-day strategic support from FEMA and ASPR, the Federal Emergency Management folks and the well, it used to be the assistant secretary for preparedness and response, but now they're fully response oriented. And the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, all are looking at, and I think revisiting some of their information they pushed out in the past to guide development of coalitions. And grants are probably going to be reset as well. So just growth oriented change is likely. And I think while change is okay, I think the uncertainty and kind of the knee jerk absence of direction, and as Mike, as you mentioned, lopping a big chunk out in terms of personnel or budget, and then realizing, oops, that was too much. Doesn't sound like it's the more precise surgery that we need that would be indicative of a more thoughtful approach. You guys, what's your thoughts?
Well, and that's exactly my point. I think, that methodology, unfortunately, just takes the environment that we try to did our work in and just makes it much more difficult. And could people suffer? Could there be catastrophic consequences to things like this? Could lives have been affected? I mean, sure. If you look at all the potentials, it's like, is this something that you want to monkey with and really screw around with when you're talking about things like public health, public safety, things like that? It just, wow. It's tough enough to do this job, but then to start undercutting the essential service and departments and things that we rely on to do our job in such a manner, it instills entropy, it instills chaos and a lot of uncertainty into what we already do. And so I don't know. I'm glad we're retired. I'm glad I'm retired. Let's put it that way. Don't want to be doing it now in this environment. And geez, moving forward, we don't know the full effects of what's been going on and what continues to go on and how it's going to affect our industry and the people who are trying to do our jobs now. I don't think we know the full effects, but I just think it's a really unsettled, kind of chaotic time right now.
Yeah, and I would agree with you guys, and again, I'm trying to stay positive to say, you know what, whether we're on this side, whether we're red or blue, whether we're on left or right, or whatever the case may be, we're going to go through some changes. And one of the analogies that the gentleman I was talking to, he said, people come out throwing haymakers right away when they start a fight, and pretty soon in the second, third round, they start getting tired, so the haymakers start. And he said, we just have to be like Muhammad Ali. He said, we have to do the rope-a-dope, and just dodge those for a while and weather the storm, and then come in and do what we need to do. I agree with you, Mike. I hope that nothing catastrophic or even bad happens, but we're weathering that storm. Let's do the rope-a-dope and keep on identifying the needs that we have, and hopefully, as I say in some of my presentations I do, like with COVID, out of something bad comes something good. There was a lot of improvements that came because of COVID that we would have never done before. That's my positive side. That let's see where we go.
Well said, both of you. Hey, I think we probably have a couple of things housekeeping wise to finish up with. One of them is that we haven't done this in the past, but we should let people know that this is being recorded in early June of 2025. So as the landscape changes, you may get updated hot washes and different perspectives. And then I think also, Mike, maybe you've got some reminders for folks that are viewing or listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we always look to you folks for feedback. These hot washes that we've started, I hope make it a little easier to hit on some topics and less of your time involved and less of our time involved in putting this information out there, these discussions out there. So let us know how we're doing. Use our email. Our email is readiness.rewired@gmail.com. Let us know. Give us some feedback. Tell us if you like this new format. Let us know if you think we suck. We got to have that information, and so we want to put together things that are helpful to you to understand and be able to work inside this environment we call emergency preparedness. So, please try to get back to us and come visit us again, huh?
And subscribe. It's all free.
Exactly. Hit that subscribe button.